or somebody that's going to be contributing to the applications that we're hearing this evening. And also, as always, thank you to anybody who is choosing to watch the meeting either live on YouTube or having had the record uploaded. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee clerk, Susan Ledane, to explain how proceedings are going to work tonight and to undertake a roll call of those that are joining us remotely. Susan.
Good evening. Rules of debate. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When the public participants are invited to speak, their microphones will be made live by the committee officer. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? Okay, I will now hand back to the chair.
Thank you very much. All right, colleagues. So item number 1, I have apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Amy Allen, and having given due notice, Councillor Val Bryant will be substituting for Councillor Allen this evening. I will ask, are there any other apologies? I can see that there are no other apologies. We're all present and correct. Thank you very much, colleagues. Item number 2 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of September 2024. I'd like to propose that we take these as read and approve those minutes as a true record of the proceedings. Could I have a seconder, please? I have Councillor Mason. Thank you very much. Do you colleagues have any comments or questions on those minutes? No, seeing no one indicate. Lovely. Could we have a vote then, please, Susan?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Item number 3 is notification of any other business. There has been none. And item number 4 is chair's announcements. Recording. In accordance with council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available both via our YouTube channel as well as on the council's ModGov site alongside the documents relevant for this evening's meeting. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item, and the detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out in the chair's announcements on your agenda papers. To clarify matters for registered speakers, members of the public that are joining us and speaking in respect of the applications this evening, if you're in a group, nobody here is in a group, but if you happen to be in a group, you'd each get 3 minutes per person. However, for the 2 of you that are presenting as members of the public, as there's just 1 of you on each item, you will both have 5 minutes to make your relevant comments. After you've spoken, members will be also able to ask you questions, points of clarification. I say they're questions and points of clarification. They're not opportunities for second speeches. And as eloquent as you may be in making those points in response, I will shut you down if I detect a hint of a speech rather than an answer to a question. I will also try and be as unintrusive as possible when you are speaking and give you a 1-minute warning, or it might be a 30-second meeting. I'll try not to cut you off if you're in mid-flow. There will also be a countdown timer that you'll be able to see on the big screens as well if you're wanting to monitor your own time. And at the end of the time, I will advise you that time has ended and politely ask you to stop speaking. But again, if I can tell that you're wrapping up and you're coming towards the end of a sentence, I'm not going to make you do a hard stop mid-flow. I will be as reasonable and accommodating as possible. Right, section 4.8.23a of the Constitution. For the purposes of clarification, in order to vote on an agenda item at this meeting, a member of the committee must be present for the entirety of the debate and consideration of that item. If a member leaves the room at any point during that item, they will not be able to vote. As always, colleagues, if any of you need a break at any time, please indicate and I will hold proceedings so that we don't fall foul of breaching the Constitution institution. The agenda order, I've moved things around slightly because we've got some items with public representation and others without. So what I will be doing is taking agenda item 9 first, which is Muntz Maiden Street in Weston, followed by item number 8, which is 68 Chiltern Road. And then after we've heard those 2 items, I will proceed to take the remaining 2 in order. So we'll go item number 9, followed by item number 8, and then agenda item 6 and 7, which colleagues will note are linked applications anyway. Right, so it brings me on to public participation. I have got Ian Houghton this evening. Thank you very much. Councillor Alistair Willoughby and Ashley Greenhall. I can see that you're all here in the room, present and correct. Very good. Right, that's all of my really boring procedural stuff done and out of the way. So I'll move us on to agenda item number 9, which is application 24/00482/FP, Muntz Maiden Street, Weston Hitchin, Hertfordshire, SG47AG. If you're jumping around your agenda packs, this application starts at page 49. Henry Thomas is our officer. So do you want to present your report, Henry?
Thank you, Chair. Since my report was published, I've received 2 further objections from the neighbouring dwellings. They've raised concerns to the Leyland cypress hedge not being included in condition 5, impacts on bats in the area, light and privacy impact to the neighbouring dwelling of the Haven, as that neighbour has since removed the outbuildings which provided screening, and also concerns regarding drainage. I've amended the tree protection condition to include the Leyland cypress hedge on the southern boundary. With regards to the impact on bats, we've consulted our in-house ecologist and they raised no objection to the proposal and have provided an informative, advising that work is stopped and Natural England is notified in the case of bats being present. With regards to the impact on the neighbouring dwellings, my report remains the same. In my view, the proposed work would not result in any unacceptable level of harm to neighbouring amenity. Regarding drainage, this is more of a consideration for building control, but the hard standing to the front of the site is stated to be permeable gravel, and I can recommend a condition requiring details of surface water drainage if required. So that's all my updates. Could you go to the slides, please? Next slide, please. So the application site is a backland plot on the north side of Maiden Street. The local context is residential and the site sits within the conservation area and is predominantly outside of the green belt. The site is within the settlement boundary for Weston. The dwelling would have residential properties on 3 sides and would share the existing access road used by the Muntz. Then this application has been called into committee with a recommendation for approval contrary to the Highways Authority, who have raised concerns due to bin drag distances, and the Parish Council, who have raised concerns to neighbour harm. Next slide, please. So this is a photo of the application site as seen from Maiden Street. The site has a number of mature trees along the periphery of the site, which would reduce the visibility of the dwelling. Next slide, please. And this is a photo showing the existing access road onto Maiden Street and the change in ground levels. Next slide, please. So this is the view facing south, looking towards the cypress hedge, which screens Maiden cottages. Next slide, please. And then this is the view facing west towards the neighbouring property of the Haven. This photo is taken from the northeast corner of the site, and it shows the apple trees which will be removed and replaced. Next slide, please. And this is the view facing east towards the host dwelling of the Muntz. Next slide, please. And this last photo is another closer view of the Maiden cottages on the left and the Leyland cypress hedge, which would screen them to the rear. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed site plan. The dwelling would be 2 stories tall with a detached single-storey garage outbuilding at the front of the site. The proposal is to use this as a bin store, and in my view, this would be preferable to the creation of a bin store along the access road. which was the condition recommended by Highways Authority. The site plan seeks to retain the tree and hedge cover around the periphery of the site. In my view, this screening and distance between the proposed dwellings and proposed dwelling and the neighbouring dwellings would negate the visual harm of a dwelling in this location. Next slide, please. So these are the proposed elevations. The dwelling would have traditional features and materials that reflect the rural setting of Weston. The side window facing towards the haven would be obscure glazed and non-opening below 1.7 metres. The dwelling would be 7.7 metres tall. Next slide, please. So these are the proposed floor plans. The dwelling would exceed the nationally prescribed space standard. Next slide, please. And these are the elevations and floor plans for the detached outbuilding. The outbuilding would be 4.5 metres tall. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do colleagues have any questions for Henry? Yes, Councillor Tyson.
Yeah, just a quick one, Henry. I can't remember from your report whether you said what these apple trees will be replaced by. You just mentioned that they would be removed and replaced. What's going to go in there?
They haven't provided any further details, and that will be covered by the landscaping condition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes, Councillor Peace.
Can I just do two quick questions, if that's allowed? One of the objections on the website mentions that a site notice wasn't displayed. Can you confirm that it was?
Yeah, there was a site notice.
Okay. And the second one is, what would the residents do with their bins? Would they be dragging them down to the main road? Is that the plan?
Yeah. So that's existing. That's how the Munts do it, and some of the neighbouring dwellings have got quite a long bin drag distance as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all right. I'm not seeing anyone else indicating that they wish to ask the officer any further questions. So I'll move us on to our next speaker, which is Ian Houghton, who's objecting to this application. Ian, you've got 5 minutes.
Right, good evening. Yes, I have volunteered to represent the owners of the Haven, Shore Cottage and 1 and 2 Maiden Cottages. 6 homes surrounding this proposal are affected in similar ways. Munts is owned by the son of the applicant, who obviously has a strong financial interest in the project going ahead. We were very surprised and disappointed when we read the report by your planning officer recommending approval. It is worth noting that my property was not considered to be effective, which it is, and your planning officer appeared to dismiss our objections as largely irrelevant. Privacy. Our main objection is the loss of privacy to the houses and the tranquility to our rear gardens. None of us are overlooked, and this was a major factor when we bought our homes, and it is about to be destroyed if this goes ahead. Much has been said about the retention of trees and hedges on the western southern borders of the site, but the maintenance of these in the hands of future owners of the new property, and from my experience, this can't be relied upon, and in practice they'll probably be removed over time, and there is nothing that we can do about it. The owner will probably claim loss of light, difficulty in maintenance, they were dying anywhere, etc. It is also worth noting that the trees on the western boundary are deciduous, and therefore any screening is much reduced during the winter months, and they are not generally in the best of health. At least one of the trees is totally covered in ivy. The construction process will undoubtedly involve some deep excavation and piling, and this could inflict mortal damage to tree roots. You cannot replace a tree. You can only replace it with a sapling, which will take 10 or 15 years to mature. The 4 cottages in Maiden Street have ground floor levels well in excess of 2 metres below the proposed house. So we are not looking at a 2-storey house, but effectively 3. This means that the top of the red brick and tile structure will stand some 10 metres or more above, and will be highly intrusive to the rear of the cottages, particularly second floor bedrooms. Your planning officer in key issue item 436 states the scale and positioning of the proposed dwelling to the rear of 1 and 2 Maiden Street is such that it would have limited to no visibility from the street scene and would be screened by these dwellings and the existing trees. As Maiden Street rises towards the centre of the village, Middlesby and Shore cottages would also be part of this screen. It is good to know that our homes at least make good screening for Maiden Street traffic and pedestrians, so they won't be too offended by the new build. I think this is an indication that your planning officer also has little faith in the existing trees acting as a reliable source in the future. Parking and traffic. I know the provision for parking for 2 cars. It may well satisfy the planners, but as we all know, that a 4-bedroom house could easily have 4 cars plus those of visitors. Any more than 2 would have to be parked in Maiden Street. School drop-off and collection times cause huge problems already, and the rest of the day there are a line of cars belonging to staff from the junction with Monts Meadow to the school. Delivery drivers would no doubt have to drive up to the house and reverse back. Not a pretty dangerous thing to do. Drainage. I know this has been mentioned, but the site is heavy clay subsoil, and any thought of surface water being soaked up by the ground after heavy rain is nonsense. The roof water and the water from the hard paved areas will simply find its way via the drive into Maiden Street or the gardens behind Maiden Cottages. It is worth noting that a couple of weeks ago we had very heavy prolonged showers and Mill Lane and Maiden Street became rivers. Both manholes in Maiden Street in front of my house had their covers lifted by internal force of the water, so that raw sewage was discharged down the road. This development certainly won't help the situation. Biodiversity net gain. Really? The provision of a swift nest spot will hardly compensate for the amount of wildlife having its habitat removed by this development. I lived in Maiden Cottage from 71 to 78, and a family of bats were there then and continue to thrive today. Their feeding area would undoubtedly include this area of the plot. Faced with this structure, they could easily decide on alternative accommodation. Finally, we agree with our parish council's view inappropriate buildings on proposed site which is on a high piece of land obtrusive to neighbours in Mill Lane and Maiden Street. We would ask that you reject your planning officer's recommendation, allow common sense to prevail and refuse planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sticking to time. Lovely. So do you colleagues have any points of clarification that they wish to ask? Yes, Councillor Brown.
You mentioned that the proposed building is on a higher piece of land. You said something about it's effectively three stories. Do you actually know how much higher? And the other question related to that is how far would this proposed building be from the existing buildings? Do you know? It might be a question for the case officer later. But you
sorry, we were asking.
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. How close is it to which building? Sorry.
So you mentioned that it's effectively 2 stories because it's on higher land.
Yeah.
How much higher is it? Is it?
Well, I don't know, because from the boundary at the back of Maiden Cottages, it's rising anyway. So it's difficult to say, but I would have thought it was 2 to 2.5 meters from the ground level of our cottages to the ground level of the new. But I couldn't verify that.
Okay, maybe I'll come back to that with the case officer.
But it does make a difference because you get it's a 4-bedroom house, so we're not looking at a small place, and be stuck up on the top there would be, I think, very intrusive to the people in particularly Maiden Cottages.
Lovely, thank you. I think officers might want to start doing a bit of digging to try and find the elevations to assist the committee. In the meantime, I will take any further questions or points of clarification members might have. Nope, I am seeing nobody indicate. Thank you very much, Mr. Hoffman, for your contribution. We don't have the applicant here this evening to present on the case. So what we would do at this point is invite our planning officer to respond to any issues raised. I'm not going to carry on padding for time because I will assume that you either have the elevations or Sean is frantically trying to find them and can advise us. So over to you, Henry.
Yeah, so as for the distance to the dwellings, one maiden cottages would be 30 meters from the proposed dwelling, and 2 maiden cottage would be 27 meters, and the outbuilding would be 16 meters and 18 meters respectively. But as for the changing ground levels, I can't seem to load the plan at the minute.
And were there any other points that you sort of wanted to come back on in summarising it?
As for the biodiversity net gain, this application was submitted before the requirement was made. So that's all I've got.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Right, so colleagues, as always, we've got a recommendation from officers to grant the permission. I am happy to take a motion from any of you, whether that's to grant, refuse, defer, etc., etc. So could I have a volunteer with a proposal? I see Councillor Muir.
It's a question to the officer.
Oh, well, I'm not taking second pops at questions, really,
Well, I did
am I?
indicate before he finished.
Ah,
You didn't actually say
procedurally,
it.
Councillor Muir, normally we take the questions on the first one, but given we've got a light agenda this evening, I will allow you to ask Henry a point of clarification because it was only a very brief summary that he came back to us with. Off you go.
We've heard from the objector about trees. They could be felled. Could we put a TPO order on the trees so that they must be retained?
Yes, so at the minute the trees are protected by the conservation area, but with the tree protection condition, they would be required to replace any trees that die during that period.
Okay, lovely. I will move us into the debate, or I will ask a member of the committee to move us into the debate. Does anybody wish to propose a motion on this? Yes, Councillor Muir.
I will certainly propose acceptance.
Okay, and it's been proposed that we accept. Could I have a seconder, please? Yes, Councillor Brown.
I'm happy to second that, reserve my right to speak.
Excellent, lovely. Right, over to you, colleagues, for any debate and discussion on the application. I'm not seeing, oh, there we go. Excellent. Councillor Mantle, please.
Thank you. The main reason this is before us is because of the county highways, and nobody's actually really mentioned why we don't like their conditions. Perhaps we ought to consider why we are possibly proposing to override a strong recommendation from the Highway Authority. Personally, I think that the recommendation from them is unreasonable, and I'd be happy to override it, but I don't think we should let that just go by default.
No, absolutely. I think that's a very valid point that you've made, Councillor Mantle. So I'm not going to attempt to construct an argument on the fly at the moment in respect of highways. I might think and reflect and decide if I want to comment on it, but I'm sure colleagues are also capable of making any points they wish to on that. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. I've got my own question, but I just found the objection from the highways. And I was looking at that about the bins. And can we just make sure it's clear? It's prior to the first use development hereby permitted a recycling bin storage area should be provided. This must be no more than 30 metres from the proposed dwelling and be within 25 metres of the curbside. Now, as far as I see, that actually holds. That it's actually, in fact, that the bin storage is the right distance. Am I?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so they were proposing to use the outbuilding as a bin store, but even from the road, it's 34 meters just to where the turning for the new dwelling would be. Therefore, it wouldn't comply with that highways condition.
But in fact, I think we ascertained that they're going to pull the bins down to the road on bin day.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's my question.
yeah, so I think it is the intent that residents will have to obviously bring the bin to curbside. And I think that there is also the usual condition in there that the distance for dragging from storage to curbside must be no more than 30 meters from the proposed dwelling and be within 25 meters of curbside bin collection point. I think that's conditioned, that's on there, that's accepted, and we're satisfied that the application is compliant with that condition, are we? Oh, sorry. I am working from digital rather than papers this evening, colleagues, so the usual ability to jump to the relevant section eludes me.
I think, from my understanding, it's 4 meters beyond the guideline distance, so it's 34 rather than 30. Building regulations have a recommendation of 30-meter drag distance, but that's a recommendation, really, rather than an absolute. From a planning perspective, we consider that to refuse planning permission on the grounds that they would have to drag the bin 4 meters further than the guideline would not be sustainable on appeal, especially given that many of the local residents drag their bins a similar distance on bin collection day. It's looking at the topography, it's a bit of a drag pulling it back, but at least the bin will be empty at that point.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
That's my question now.
Yes.
Apart from the conundrum about bins, I don't think there are any reasons to actually refuse this. I mean, it comes within limited infilling in a category A village. And so I would support granting permission. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Bryant. Councillor Mason.
Sorry, I'm back on the bins. Probably not for the first time. I can reveal my ignorance to the committee on this. I'm surprised that the distance the bin has to be dragged is a consideration in the first place. It was news to me. I would have thought that was a decision one makes when one looks at a property. Because there's so many other considerations. I live at the top of a very steep hill, and I wouldn't fancy dragging a loaded bin 30 meters up it, I can assure you, but that would be my choice. So I am interested to know that it's a condition. And I think I'm possibly reassured by the answer. It seems to be a recommendation rather than, and if the only grounds we have for rejecting it is it's 4 meters too far to drag the bin, I'm struggling with that.
Lovely. I think there's sort of as well when it comes down to bin collections, the usual comments around highway safety, the length of time vehicles stop in order to facilitate collections, etc., etc. But I think the report has set out and summarised things, and we've also got the highways report from September that's uploaded to the planning portal as well, which sets out their recommendations and comments around this. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. I'm not overly concerned about the bin drag distance for all the reasons that have already been stated, which I won't go over again. I think the main objection of the parish council and the neighbours seems to be the height of the land and the intrusive nature of it to neighbours. But I don't think that really holds with a distance of 30. What was it? 30 and 27 metres. That's a long way. So I don't think we could really refuse it on grounds of being loss of privacy, being obtrusive. I don't think that would hold up personally. And so that's why I'm minded. Well, I've already seconded it. I'm minded to grant.
Thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. And I think just to sort of capture and summarise what I'm hearing from colleagues is we're not seeing anything that when we weigh it in the planning balance makes us feel that there is a sustainable argument or a planning reason to not approve this application. I think we've weighed up and considered the issues around the concerns that neighbours have about being overlooked. I think the report sets out the screening, and Councillor Brown has rightly pointed out the distances between the properties as well. And I think that I'm certainly satisfied that Highways have provided us with recommendations in response and a workable way. And I hear the advice from planning officers as well around drag distance of bins. And I would agree that 4 meters really does seem to be a bit de minimis, and we would be on shaky ground if we rejected on that alone, wouldn't we? So I've heard a proposal that's we've had a proposal. It's been seconded. I'm seeing no further desire to speak from members of the committee. Final warning. No. Okay. Right. Could we move to a vote, please, Susan?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much, colleagues. And thank you, Mr. Hoffman, as well, for your contributions this evening. It was helpful. I'll move us on then to agenda item number 8, which is application 24/01489/FPH, 68 Chiltern Road, Baldock, Hertfordshire, SG7 6LS. Colleagues will be able to find this application from page 41 of your agenda packs. Again, this is Henry Thomas to present.
Good evening, members. I've distributed a written addendum to my report, which have addressed the factual errors within my report. I've got no further updates. Could you go to the slides, please? So the application site is a semi-detached residential dwelling on the west side of Chiltern Road. It's within the settlement boundary for Baldock, and it's not located within the Baldock Conservation Area. The application is a resubmission, with the previous application being refused on the grounds of contrary materials and design, inadequate parking, and overbearing impact on the neighbouring dwelling. Due to the proposed materials, the work would not be possible under permitted development rights and therefore require an application for planning permission. The applicant has therefore amended the scheme to use timber cladding, reduced the depth of the rear element, provided a sunlight assessment, provided a second parking space, and added front solar panels. This application has been called into committee on the basis that the sustainable features would overcome the reasons for refusal under the original application. Next slide, please. So 68 Chiltern Road is part of a row of 9 pairs of rendered semi-detached dwellings with traditional architectural features. A number of these properties have been extended to the front, side and rear with sympathetic materials, forms and scales. This includes the attached dwelling of 66 Chiltern Road, which also has a hip to gable and rear dormer windows. Therefore, I do not raise any concern to the hip to gable element of the proposal, as it would assist in rebalancing the pair. At present, I would suggest that the existing dwelling, which is finished in white render and plain roof tiles, is considered in keeping with the traditional character and appearance of the street scene and plays a positive contribution to this row of dwellings. The dwelling is currently served by a rear garage outbuilding, which will be removed as part of this application. The applicant has demonstrated that the scheme can provide 2 off-street parking spaces. Therefore, I do not raise any concern to the parking provision. Next slide, please. So this photo shows the row of semis as you go north up Chiltern Road. The front extensions generally have pitched roofs and materials to match the dwelling. And a number of these properties are served by rear garages accessed down the side of the property. Next slide, please. This is the view facing south, where there is a change in material to brick. Whilst these dwellings are different in appearance, they remain relatively traditional in their architectural features. Next slide, please. And this is the rear elevation of the property, where you can see that the attached neighbouring property has been extended. And you can also see a slight change in ground levels, which slopes away from the property. Next slide, please. So here are the elevation plans for the front and side as seen from the detached neighbouring dwelling of 70 Chiltern Road. The applicant has proposed a number of sustainability features which have been listed in my report, such as the solar panels on the front roof slope. The front and side element are proposed in an ice grey charred timber cladding which in my view would be visually harmful addition to the dwelling and to the street scene, resulting in a contemporary form and appearance in this otherwise traditional setting. Next slide, please. And these are the rear and side elevation plans as seen from the attached neighbouring dwelling of 66 Chiltern Road. The box dormer and rear extension would be black charred timber cladding, whilst the rear element and box dormer would be large features on the rear of the dwelling. The applicant has provided a sunlight assessment and reduced the depth of the rear element. I therefore do not consider that the extension would be overbearing to either neighbour. It is my view, therefore, overall, that the contemporary form and appearance of the alterations would not be sympathetic to the traditional character and appearance of the existing property and the wider area, such that the development does not respond positively to the site's local context. The application should therefore be refused on that basis. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Do colleagues have any questions or points? Oh, Councillor Willoughby, sorry.
Sorry, Chair. I just would, I know this is a little bit unusual, but I would actually like to request additional time to address this application, please. The agenda supplement that you will all have received was actually only published today. So rather than yesterday by 12 p.m. when it was supposed to be, and therefore there was not actually really adequate time to consider the impact of this in what we're addressing. I think in the interest of natural justice and fairness, it is right that a bit more time is given to address the unsighted update due to late publishing.
I hear the point that you're making, and I'm also mindful that Henry didn't necessarily take us through the addendum. I would expect, obviously, members of the committee to have read all of the papers, no matter how late they were updated or submitted. I shall not embarrass members of the committee by asking whether or not, in fact, they have done that. I will operate on the assumption that they understand their roles and responsibilities. As Councillor Willoughby knows, the rules around extending speaking time require 3 days clear notice for the request. However, I am fair, and if I think that a positive contribution is being made, so long as you don't run over time excessively, I may be minded, depending on relevance of what you're saying, to allow you to continue. But if I ask you to stop, I would expect you to respect that direction from the chair. All right, there we go. I'm nothing if not fair and reasonable. Anyway. Thank you for that. I'll get us back on track for where we should be, which is, colleagues, any points of clarification or questions for the officer? Yes, Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. I've been looking at the last application for this, which was refused in June this year. And I've got the plans, and for the elevations, I can't see any difference. Are there any differences? Can you tell what they are?
Yeah, so
my eyesight not good enough.
So they've changed the material and the colour of the material on the front. I think they've added solar panels to the front as well, and a air source heat pump to the rear, if I remember correctly.
So there are additions.
And they've changed the site plan to show 2 parking spaces.
So
and
there
they've
are
reduced the
additions
depth
to
of the extension.
The plans, the actual plans which we saw earlier on this year are the same with additions added.
Yeah.
Am I correct in that?
Yeah, apart from the rear element's been reduced slightly.
Can I also ask what is different about the parking from last time we saw this application?
Well, they didn't demonstrate 2 parking spaces on the original application.
So is the space available for parking different?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, Councillor Fernandez.
I just wondered what the treatment of the flat roof was. Is it going to be a feature in any way? Is it going to have plants growing on it? Is it just, bitumen and tar?
Not as far as I'm aware. Maybe the applicant might be able to share some more light on that.
I think I think maybe hold on to that question, Councillor Fernandez, and when we come to the applicant, ask it directly to the applicant at that stage. Councillor Brown.
I just wanted to ask about your point in 4.3.15, where you say about the sustainability and the carbon emissions. This weighs moderately in favour of the proposal and the planning balance. However, such benefits could be achieved by a design that responds to reflects to the local context. So are you essentially saying that the same level of sustainability, low carbon emissions, etc., could be achieved with materials that would reflect the local context and fit with a street scene? Is that what you're saying in that paragraph?
Sean, would you be able to answer this one by any chance?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Sorry, 4.3.15, there's a statement about the benefits of the environmental benefits, the carbon emissions, could be achieved by a design that responds to the local context that better reflects the street scene. So what I was just asking is, you're saying that you could use materials that are in keeping with the street scene to achieve the same level of sustainability and low carbon emissions? Is that what that's saying?
I see no reason why you can't enhance the sustainability of an existing dwelling through a design of extension that reflects the existing dwelling rather than departing from it.
Yes.
You can incorporate more sustainable design features into a design that is more traditional in appearance. That's basically the view that's expressed in this report. And we have said that the sustainability elements, the enhancement of the sustainability of the dwelling, is a positive that weighs in favour of the proposal. But that does not, in our view, outweigh the harm that would arise from the design of the proposal. That's a judgment call, and members could take a different view and consider that the sustainability benefits outweigh the impact that a more contemporary, modern designed extension would have to what is a traditionally designed dwelling. But that's a matter for yourselves to weigh up those different considerations.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Mason.
Thank you. My apologies to Sean for interrupting him. I was asking him actually what's the posh way of saying I'd like to see the pictures again, but he wasn't able. But he wasn't able to answer. So can I ask to see the pictures again, please? I'd like to see the, rather than the plans, the actual elevations of the proposed design, because I only caught the end of it.
On the front.
Yeah.
If you answer on the front.
And the front one?
So it's the property on the left hand side.
Yeah, no, I know. Doesn't really give a clear image of what it's. I'm still not seeing what I want, but it's clearly not there.
I think, are you wanting to sort of have a bit more of a less of an ink and line drawing and more of a visual representation of what it would actually look like?
given the central issue looks like it's how it fits in with the rest of the street. I'm not sure I'm any clearer. But thank you for.
Yeah, so colleagues, I'm going to make a statement that's actually a question. Bear with me while I put the words in the right order. So Henry, I think my understanding of your report is essentially the majority of the application that's before us were content with. The outstanding issue really is around the front of the proposal, and the question is whether the cosmetic harm that you've identified in respect of your opinion, how this fits with the rest of the neighbourhood, is outweighed by the sustainability, et cetera, and you've come down on the side that you believe that the cosmetics outweigh the potential benefits that the sustainability would provide.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah, and I think colleagues as well, I think Henry, you're relying on, let me pull them up, obviously section 12 of the National Planning Policy Framework as it currently stands, which talks about achieving well-designed and beautiful places. And then in reference to our own local plan policy D1, which focuses on sustainable design, including the creation and enhancement of the public realm, and also policy D2 in the local plan. Yeah. So those are effectively the key questions, and policy D2 deals with house extensions, replacement dwellings, and outbuildings. And again, my understanding is that the key question that you've been weighing up in your report is whether the extension is sympathetic to the existing house in height, form, proportions, roof type, window detail, etc., etc., etc. Yeah,
that is correct.
Good. I have understood what the officer's report is getting at. Excellent. I trust colleagues also understand what the officer's report is getting at. Yes, good. Okay. I am not seeing anybody wish to ask further points of clarification on this. So next up I have Councillor. Oh, do we not normally take the applicant before member advocate? Is it usually?
It's usually opposition.
It is opposition. That's what's throwing me off, because we've got no opposition to this application, colleagues. So Councillor Willoughby, you have 5 minutes. I will be as generous as I feel like being, depending on how relevant you're being. Off you go.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by saying that I think the communication in this application has been more than a bit lacking. The applicant has addressed many, if not all, concerns that have been highlighted by officers previously, but has had little feedback, and I am confused as to why this has come to committee rather than us working with the applicant. I cannot imagine the full extent, though I have had many conversations with the applicants, of the impact this has had on them, particularly the huge amount this has set them back in their timeline. As a brief bit of context, prior to the applicant taking on this property, the house was in an awful state. It had a great deal of issues with mold and mildew, floorboards rotting through, and was in such a bad way that the previous owner was only occupying the living room with no working boiler or lights, only a fan, heater and lamp to provide any sort of comfort. This is a very sad story, but it also shows just how far this property can come if the applicant is allowed to go ahead. The applicant has effectively dealt with every concern that was highlighted from their previous declined application and has brought forward a forward-looking, well-designed and sustainable home in this application, going above and beyond what would be expected of them to bring this home up to scratch, and have shown a willingness to invest significant amounts of money to improve the property's efficiency. The officer's interpretations appear to imply that only a replication of the previous design would be acceptable here, but such an approach would prevent positive and forward-thinking designs that promote and embrace sustainability. This proposal has been designed in such a way as to improve the visual appearance of the property in line with our local plans policy D1. Policy D1 and section 12 of the NPPF seek for new developments to respond positively to the surrounding environment. This proposal is a significant improvement on the visual impact that this property previously had on the street. But beyond just that, it is an exemplar in using retrofit to convert existing housing stock, particularly stock that has become run down, into something that is fit for modern living and visually appealing, as well as fulfilling the personal obligation that we all have to addressing climate change. Within the draft design SPD, where it discusses foundations for good design, the key questions to be asked: functionality, does it work well? Firmness, will it last? Delight, does it look good? Do the buildings outperform statutory minima, such as building regulations? I would say that this application is a firm yes to all of the questions, and we should be championing and supporting our residents that are willing to go the extra mile. It appears that the only area of concern here is our officer's subjective view of the appearance of the building, as the concerns of the neighbours have been adequately addressed and several have embraced the concept for the new design. Neighbouring residents on the street have already asked the applicant questions about sustainability technology within the designs and the current state of the property, and have asked for more information on how they could improve the energy efficiency of their homes. This is exactly what we should be hoping for in the very best of developments coming up across our district, and we now have an opportunity to support and promote that. The applicant even went so far as to invite the entire planning department around to see for themselves the technologies going into the build. However, they were advised only the case officer would attend. I know that there were officer concerns about the use of modern materials in the appearance of this application's design. However, this is not the case. The materials used for the cladding are timber, which I think we can all agree is hardly new. There have been timber-cladded buildings for thousands of years. It's a bit of a stretch to suggest that this should be rejected. Indeed, less than 100 metres down the street, there is a timber cladding and modern-looking development. Much can be said about how Render looks after just a few years, and the upkeep to keep it looking its best, especially at a low level where it attracts dirt and mould. Whereas the timber cladding the applicants have selected, I have been informed, has been known to keep its finish and last for up to 100 years. The proposed flat roof on the porch has also been mentioned. Having spoken to the applicant and read into this a little bit, it is clear that a flat roof can provide a better level of energy efficiency and therefore a more sustainable design. To reduce energy use, you need to reduce the thermal envelope of the building. A flat roof reduces the external surface area of the building and reduces its volume, thus reducing the energy needed to heat and cool the building. I also know that there are other flat roof porches on this street and surrounding areas that show this would not be out of character for the area. This also includes several properties that have flat roofed garages attached to the frontage of the buildings. Beyond this, I know that the applicant has tried to address this concern by offering to discuss other options with officers, but this has not been followed up on at all, a recurring theme. Regarding the argument that this design should be in keeping with the surrounding environment, this is made difficult by the sheer amount of different housing styles that are present on this street. I know that the officers update numbers the different styles at 4, but having just gone down the Chiltern Road on the adjoining street once more this evening on my way here, there are a great deal more different styles, possibly even 10 or 11, with various different sub-styles and combinations of different porch, garage, cladding, etc. designs. Committee members, if they have a device in front of them, could even look at the Google Street View to see the rest of the street for themselves. As someone that has walked up and down the street many times over the last few years, I've always been intrigued by the incredible eclectic collection of styles that are present. Even the houses that are within a small stretch of this application have a great variety, with whitewash pebble dashing, different styles of brick, and some properties with and without the distinct garages and or porches. All that can be said of this street is that it is an interesting collection of homes that make up a nice neighbourhood while being also different. The property and some of the neighbouring properties were all built in a particular period, but have changed many times over their existence, becoming a neighbourhood full of character and a diverse aesthetic. This is what it is to be part of an organically grown town, with residents putting their stamp on their community. Some of the community benefits have already been laid out in my speech, and the environmental benefits have been referenced in the officer's report. Having discussed this with the applicant, I know they would welcome any member of the committee or council, along with any local resident, into their home to see how old and new can be combined to create a sustainable home for the future. This application puts forward a proposal for how good sustainable design can be used to rejuvenate dilapidated housing stock into homes that are fit for modern living while caring for our environment. Rejecting this proposal will be a step back in our approach to sustainability, our environment, and our housing supply, which I don't believe that anyone in this room wants.
Thank you very much. I
Thank
think that's point well made. That was very, very pacey. There may be things that colleagues want additional clarification or might need repeating, because I think that was a bit of a speed run through a speech. Well done for not going over time too much. Any questions, points of clarification? Councillor Brown.
So our case officers said that there were brick buildings and rendered buildings in that street, but didn't mention timber buildings. You say there are other timber buildings. Is that correct?
Yep. In fact, not even that much further down the road, there's a whole block of flats that has timber cladding on it. And there is also an assisted living that has timber cladding. So yeah, there are and other bits and pieces. I mean, if you can look on the street as you go down, you should be able to see some.
But not within visible distance of this building. From the photos we saw.
Probably not in the immediate visible. Depends how good your eyesight is, I suppose.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. I'm on Google Street View and I'm not seeing any timber-clad buildings anywhere within reasonable distance of this building at all. It's not taking me down the road. Do you have the numbers of any houses as timber-clad?
Sorry, my apologies. It's actually on Woodland Way, because this street is two and a half streets that kind of are one, really. So it's just down the road on Woodland Way.
Could you give me a number on Woodland Way?
Yeah, sorry, give me one moment and I will do so for you. So the larger block of flats that has cladding is sorry, on Beechridge Way. Sorry, that's my fault. Which, as I say, just comes off of this. And there's timber-clad buildings around Beechridge Way and around Temple Court and the adjoining flats.
May I come back just quickly? It's quite a way away. It's not part of the street scene for this house. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mason.
Yeah. It almost seemed to me you conflating two issues, which was about the desirable element of sustainability in the new thing, and then I guess the physical look of it. And I'm slightly confused by that because they seem to be slightly two separate things. I mean, presumably you can employ in sustainability in the design and still have a design that's sympathetic to the aesthetic or the chronology of the street.
Obviously I'm sorry, I had to make lots of arguments very quickly so I can understand that there appears to be some conflation, but part of it is materials used being sustainable. So timber that continues to keep its finish for 100 years is more sustainable than render that does deteriorate over a period of time, well, a much quicker period of time. And certainly you can see from the pictures that you would have seen and on the street view that there are several houses along that stretch that have deteriorating render, whereas obviously the timber is actually quite sustainable in the sense that it will last for apparently 100 years. So that's a sales point that is made on this particular timber. So
Okay, I think I want to sort of look at the front elevations of the property and then also link that to the existing street scene. So obviously we've got a semi-detached property where one half of it is going to be completely different to the other half of it. And I think what officers are saying is that because of that, this is going to harm the visual look and feel of the road. Are all of the houses on Chiltern Road identical when they're semi-detached? So they've got consistent porches across the front?
no, absolutely not. There are a huge variety of different porches, ones that have that have flatter roofs, that have more tilted roofs, and that's including ones that are attached or semi-detached houses. Then there's, in fact, I would say relatively few that actually are uniform for both houses on each. Gosh, I can't think of the word chunk. Might be isn't really the right word, but I'm going to use it. And indeed, some have the doors at the front, some have doors off to the side. There really isn't a great deal of uniformity, even in the ones that are of the same type of cladding, for example, or a similar cladding. There really isn't that much uniformity. And in fact, there's quite a lot of flat roofs, for example, along that street, which I know is obviously noted. So I think it's fair to say that it's not a street that has been all put up at the same time. It is organically grown and quite diverse.
And just to clarify, because I think the officer report mentioned flat roofs in the context of garages. Are there porches that have flat roofs? I can see Michael nodding, but I want the answer.
There is, but I honestly, the number has gone out my head. I'm really sorry, but you could probably say there's 1, 2 doors down. A couple of doors down. In fact, I'm reliably informed. I can't remember the number I'm afraid to say.
Nope, that's absolutely fine. I'm not seeing any other colleagues indicate. Does anyone else have any questions for Councillor Willoughby or points of clarification? No. Okay, right. In that case, I shall move us on to the applicant's representative, which is Ashley Greenhall. You've got 5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ashley Greenhall, CEO and co-founder of Perio, a digital retrofit platform. Today, I'm speaking as principal designer and future occupant of 68 Chiltern Road, currently a hugely rundown property. Together with my partner, Laura, the applicant, we're working to create our family home. This project isn't just about an extension. We're applying passive house principles to achieve a highly sustainable home. It's a deep retrofit designed for energy efficiency and environmental responsibility to reach both central and local government targets. I'd like to note at this point there's been no public objection and the project is outside any area of defined or protected character and outside the conservation area. The UK has some of the least efficient homes in Europe and radical action is required. We're addressing this by incorporating solar panels, a heat pump and external wall insulation in line with the North Herts Climate Strategy and Local Plan Policy SP1. Houses like ours, built in the 1930s, had no energy standards, so making them efficient today requires some changes. The Planning Officer's report mentions that our sustainable design as a minor benefit, but I would argue that aiming for one of the most sustainable retrofits in Hertfordshire deserves significant merit. We have one opportunity to upgrade this home before net zero in 2050. The planning team's main concern are the flat roof extension and timber cladding, which we argue align with Local Plan Policy D1 as it encourages high quality, innovative design. Timber is a natural, sustainable and traditional material that complements the area's character and aligns with the NPPF paragraph 152, which promotes low carbon development and encourages innovative designs that raise local design standards. The use of render would add 15 tonnes of embodied carbon, whereas our timber cladding would just add 1 tonne. That's a huge difference in carbon impact, and these design choices are essential if we're serious about sustainability. The other key concern was the flat roof. We opted for a flat roof because it minimises the building surface area, reducing the energy needed for heating and cooling by reducing the internal volume as supported by section 1.19 of the draft sustainability SPD. The flat roof also provides space for solar panels, crucial to our renewable energy strategy. This isn't just about aesthetics. It's a sustainable, functional solution that aligns with NPPF paragraph 154 to integrate renewable energy into developments. Baldock already has many homes that feature flat roofs and timber cladding in a variety of colours. Most significantly, with precedent on Norton Road, just 1 kilometre away, where black and grey timber cladding is on extensions and porches with flat roof, visible from the street. Under permitted development rights, we could build a separate bike shed at the side, just 60 centimetres lower than what's proposed, and clad it in any material without planning permission. But we chose to integrate the bike store into the design for a cohesive look. This speaks to our commitment to sustainable transport, aligning with the NPPF paragraph 108 and the Local Plan Policy T1. The porch, though just 13 centimetres higher than what's allowed under permitted development, was designed this way to accommodate the high ceilings and insulation needed to meet Passive House standards. Using timber cladding, it ties cohesively into the design. Choosing a flat roof again minimises embodied carbon and reduces energy use, further supporting our net zero goals. When the planning officer came to visit, he told us that the only issue he had was with the flat roof on the porch, a small item of contention, so we paid to finalise our designs. We did not expect to be sitting here 9 weeks later, defending our whole design following radio silence from the planning team. In conclusion, this project is about doing the right thing for the environment, the community, and the future of housing. Our design aligns with both national and local policies, including the NPPF Section 14, which calls for development that reduces carbon emission and adapts to the climate crisis. I implore the committee to support this application, not just for this project, but for a future where private homeowners are empowered to make their homes greener, more efficient and fit for the challenges ahead. Without approval today, our live project will grind to a halt. Thank you. And if you've got any questions, please do ask me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, colleagues, any questions for the applicant? Goodness. Councillor Tyson.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, some very sort of compelling sort of argumentation about sustainability, but I think one of the stumbling blocks is more of a subjective issue of the look of it and whether the impact that will have on the setting. And what I just like to pick you up on is the phrase that you used, which suggested that your development would complement the area's character. So what did you mean by the area?
So we're very close to the nature reserve, and I feel that using timber close to a nature reserve is quite complementary. And it's, yeah, we're surrounded by green trees, and yeah, why not use timber that is so much more sustainable when you look at the carbon impact of render is 300 kilograms. Well, 300 kilograms of carbon per square meter. Timber is between 50 and 60 kilograms of embodied carbon. So it's a significant difference. And that's why we chose that material. It wasn't just to stand out. It's a timber framed building, might I add. It's if we were building a block and beam, then yes, maybe we would suggest rendering it. But for us to add a cementitious material to the outside of a timber frame doesn't make any sense. It increases the load and also adds a really high carbon intensive product to the outside of the property.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, well, you kind of answered my previous question about the flat roof, and I understand it's so you can accommodate solar panels. But like the previous member of the committee, it's the appearance. I think that they're very laudable aims. I think it's absolutely great, and everybody should be building to passive house standards. But it still remains that the street is a street of essentially 1930s interwar semis, and they do look quite similar. They're all white. They haven't got timber. Is there any way that you could, reach the same sort of efficiency with it, making it look more like the surrounding houses, really?
The reason we've gone for the flat roof is because we need to reduce the internal volume. It reduces the size of the heat pump that we need. It reduces the amount of energy that the property is pumping out. So we opted for the flat roof because that is the most sustainable option for the property. And that's why we've gone for it. If we could have put a slope on, I would have put a slope on, but I really think that it's important that we push for the boundaries of what's achievable with sustainable design. And one of the passive house principles is that you have box-like shapes. And in the sustainability SPD, it says that we should have box-like shapes, and they should be clad in materials that make it slightly different from what was there. So that's what we're going for. Yes, we could change the timber to a lighter color if required. But I don't think that that's going to have a huge impact on the design. It's a light grey timber. If you use natural timber, that would grey over time. All we're doing is speeding up that process and making a more consistent colour of cladding.
Okay. Thank you. I think there might be a point possibly there to be picked up in Henry's summing up around whether changing the colour of the timber and making that lighter would address the harm, or and just maybe it might be useful to explain more to the committee about why you think the porch is harmful when you do sum up, because I can see this being a key turning point, given that's seeming to me the only point that is in dispute on this application. I'm going to take, did you have something else that you wanted to add on Councillor Fernandez's question?
Yes, I did. Some of the houses in the street aren't just white render. There's a grey house. There's a grey house that's painted just opposite. A bit further down the street, just past the new development. And yeah, there is other color options. There's red roofs further down. The street is very, very different. And I don't think we're doing harm. We're trying to use a natural material to make a good design. But we always said that if the porch was an issue, we'd remove it from the design. However, we did not hear anything back from the planning officer after he came to visit, despite chasing several times and trying to call. If we could have changed the application, we would have done that 9 weeks ago when we were told that there could be an issue with the porch.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mantle.
Thank you. A couple of points. Firstly, have you considered future maintenance, and are you convinced that future maintenance will not be any harder or more expensive as a result of these changes to the design, which might be good now, but in 10 years' time, will they have any impact? And the second question is, I wasn't very clear from the pictures we saw, whether the porch extends across the whole of the frontage of your half of the semi and abuts the porch which is already on your neighbour, or whether there is a gap between them. I'd be grateful if you could clarify.
Okay, so with the porch, it is the same square meterage as what's permitted under permitted development. It does not go over the whole frontage of the property. It literally is just an entrance space and an opportunity to bring a bit more natural light into the property from the front elevation. What was the first question? Sorry.
The first question was, have you considered future maintenance, and are you confident that there will be no greater cost and inconvenience and work in future maintenance compared with more traditional designs?
Okay, so the sushi ban, the charred timber could need oiling every 5 to 10 years, but it does have a lifespan due to the charring aspect of it of up to 100 years. So it's a Japanese treatment that's been used in Japan for thousands of years. And yeah, it's a cladding that does last and keep its color. It doesn't fade like a lot of other newer timbers that then turn grey.
That's what I asked
him. Did you want to sort of re-clarify the question?
Yeah, my question was, how confident are you that the overall maintenance of this extension will be no worse than maintaining a more traditional designed extension?
I'm confident that it will be a lot easier to maintain. Render, especially where we are close to the nature reserve, there is definitely a lot more mildew and growth from natural substances, and I think that the timber will resist that much better than the a rendered alternative.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Billing.
Hi. You mentioned the flat roof situation. I know we've touched on that quite a few times already. I was always under the impression that flat roofs often leak a lot. And with the fact that the property already had issues with dampness and mold, that does then concern me for the longevity of having a flat roof. I also believe, I might be wrong again, that slate roofs are actually more sustainable in lasting a lot longer. This is only just my own research in getting my own property looked at. But yeah, I just kind of, have you looked at the alternatives? You mentioned flat roof, you want then solar panels, but have you actually looked at the other alternatives and looked at all those other things?
Yes, we have. So in terms of your concern about mold and mildew, we're actually creating a whole air tightness scheme throughout the whole of the project. We're also incorporating mechanical ventilation and a heat recovery system to the tune of £7,000 that's going into the property, which will actively improve the efficiency of the property. And yeah, it will reduce the chances of getting any mold, if not completely eliminate the chances of getting any mold. Flat roofs, yes, they can leak, but the systems that we're looking at are guaranteed between 15 and 25 years, and it's a small single ply membrane that's made of recycled materials.
Could I come back? On top of that as well, can I also ask about the potential of the insulation? Because I know that with flat roofs, there's actually less room for insulation. Will there be insulation in your porch that you're planning to put to, because obviously it can be affected by more extreme temperatures?
Yeah, so we've opted for a warm roof system on the property, and that's part of the reason why it's quite so tall, or perceived as tall. Is 3.13 meters tall, but that's because we've allowed for 150 millimeters of insulation, which exceeds what is required under planning permission, under building regulations. in terms of U values. And I want to add at this point that the walls also are passive house standard walls. So the building regs at the moment, I think, are 0.18 for a wall. We are going to 0.13. So we're putting a significant investment into making the fabric of this building extremely extremely sustainable.
I'm going to ask members of the committee a question unusually. Do colleagues understand the sort of technical aspects around cold roofs and warm roofs, or would you like a very brief potted explanation of that? I'm seeing members say, no, we understand what a warm roof is. We understand what a cold roof is. We don't need an explanation. If anybody wants a quick check, you can Google some RICS guidance on spray foam insulation, actually from 2023, that's got a very handy quick primer that shows you in diagram form what a warm roof and a cold roof is and the different sort of benefits of them. Obviously, the system that you're looking at in a flat roof is going to be different to a pitched roof and the way that operates. Right. Do you colleagues have any further questions for the applicant? Yes, Councillor Fernandez.
I would just like to know how dark the charred timber is. Is it black?
So on the back elevation, the charred timber is black, and it has a crackled effect over it. But you can't see that unless you're really up close. And the front elevation, the timber, I think we did include some of it in the supplementary planning document, but basically it's a very light, a light grey. I'm trying to replicate what kind of colour it would be in this room. Maybe the colour of the door frame just over there, but obviously in a very, a very light coloured grey, almost dove grey.
Okay. But there is actually in the supplementary planning, what's the title of the document? Sorry, supplementary design statement that's on the planning portal, which I think is the first document when you open up the document pack that's in there, examples that show the ice grey charred timbers, and they are probably lighter than that. They're sort of more in the color palette of the walls and the blinds, so they are a very light grey, and members should be able to see that. The vertical cladding on the rear of the building, by contrast, is much, as you've said, much darker, more black. The photos of both different types of cladding are in this document if colleagues want to have a look and locate that on the portal. Right, I'm seeing nobody else indicate that they have questions or points of clarification for Ashley. So I'll pass over to Henry to sort of sum up and make any final points.
I think after the refusal of the first application, my team leader recommended they make use of the council's paid pre-application service. Our position on amendments is clear. I think in my view, it couldn't be amended, and therefore it was brought to committee as it was submitted. And this is not a subjective opinion of mine. This is the consistent view of the planning team. That's all I've got.
Okay, Sean, did you have anything to add in summarising from officers?
I'd just like to briefly expand upon our policy now for accepting amendments to applications. Where an applicant has entered into the fee paid pre-application service and taken that into account, we will accept further amendments upon receipt of the application that are relatively minor and deal with issues that may not have been covered in the pre-application submission. When an applicant has not entered into the pre-application service, in order to make timely decisions on applications, we generally speaking don't accept material changes to an application that would involve reconsultation on the application. And that's the current approach. And that's why, in this instance, the case officer didn't go back to the applicant asking for further amendments to the scheme.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, colleagues, I have got a recommendation from officers that we refuse permission on this. Again, as always, you can propose what the officers have suggested, or you can come up with a different motion. Councillor Muir.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to this debate or the words so far from the applicant. I really do understand what he's trying to do, and it's going to be the best for the property. I would like to propose that we accept this planning and go against officer's recommendations.
Thank you very much. You didn't say it, but I'm going to boldly assume that you're also reserving your right to speak further on this, because that seemed to me just putting the motion. Do I have a seconder for the proposal? Oh, go on, help me out, guys. Yes, Councillor McDonnell.
Yes, I'll second. Accept it. Well, whatever it is, how it goes, and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Yep. Lovely. Okay, so we've had a proposal that we accept the application. That's been seconded. So I will move us on to debate that particular motion and the application as a whole. Over to you, colleagues. Yes, Councillor Brown.
So, as members and hopefully members of the public who are watching will know, I feel absolutely passionately about climate change, and the need for sustainability and the need for reducing carbon emissions. As Cabinet Member for Planning and Transport, I was ambitious about pushing up our standards. We've signed up to the Herts Development Quality Charter, and I think we need to go further, pushing through sustainability principles. And we, as has been mentioned, we now have a sustainability SPD that has been adopted. So I think the commitment towards reducing carbon emissions and high sustainable standards of sustainability, if I can get that word right, is laudable. However, I have some issues with passive house because I have in many locations seen passive houses buildings where they stand out like a sore thumb and just do not fit with the street scene. And I think there is a balance to be had between the design, the need for reducing emissions, which is a very urgent need. We have declared a climate emergency and we need to act on that. But there's a balance with that and creating designs that really are not in keeping with the local context. And what I'm hearing from our officer is that low carbon emissions could be achieved in a different way that would reflect the local context. And so personally, I think that's important. And I think there would be a way of designing and retrofitting that would still be in keeping with the street scene. Admittedly, it wouldn't be passive house standards, but it would be a lot better than what than the original property as was built in the 1930s. And so actually I'm minded to vote against the recommendation to accept and to support the officer's recommendation to refuse, if you get me correctly.
Okay, lovely. Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with a lot of what I think pretty much everything that Councillor Brown just said. I've got to say for the record, utmost respect for the applicant and the applicant's representative for what they're trying to do here. I mean, it's fantastic, but I think it's fantastic in the wrong place. And I think, like everybody else, I've got Google Earth on my screen, and what I see is a long row of semi-detached 1930s houses. In the same way, if it was Victorian houses or whatever, there is a consistency down there, and I'm afraid what I'm seeing from my pictures, it would stand out like a sore thumb however sustainable it is. And it's like I've just listened to two parallel arguments that are never going to converge. And on the sustainability argument, you got me all the way. I mean, it's incredibly impressive. But on the view that the officers have given us on the decision, which is it does not blend in whatever, meet the street scene or whatever you want. I'm afraid that those two arguments are not going to meet. And I think in fairness, we could argue about how much notice you had or what's gone back and forward with the planning department. But I don't think it matters. I don't see any suggestion that's going to meet that street scene anytime soon. I mean, one hopes it's possible, and I can only, I don't know if it was me to suggest, but I'm sure with the ingenuity that I've heard today, something could come back which could meet that compromise. But at the moment, I just don't see any way that I can accept that it would look right, for want of a better term, in that long row of pretty much identical houses. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm going to draw a line under part of this and remind colleagues that, obviously there were points that were raised about the process and the procedure and how this application was managed. That's not what we're going to be debating or considering, and ultimately that's not going to be material. That's a matter that might be pursued by the applicant outside of the planning process effectively as a complaint about the service the council has provided if it comes down to it. So if I could ask colleagues to focus on the key question in this, which to my mind seems to be the balancing act that we have to carry out as always, and thinking and reflecting really around whether this application responds positively to the site's local context, and whether those points around the cosmetics of utilising a particular type of timber cladding in this space cause so much harm to the local areas and to the local context that harm effectively outweighs the positive contributions that have been set out by the applicant in respect of sustainability. So I think we're in balancing act territory. I can see that Michael has indicated, but I'm going to do something different. I'm going to take Councillor Peace first.
Well, I agree with a lot of the points that Councillor Brown and Councillor Mason have made. And something I'm very passionate about is giving local people a say in development in their areas. So I've been looking at the Baldock neighbourhood plan. There are two policies that are relevant. The first is G4, and that does indicate that applications for alterations to existing properties that use designs achieving high levels of energy efficiency will be supported. But then we've got this balancing act because we go to policy G3, which talks about a design, and AECOM have done design codes for Baldock and for developments and extensions. And whilst it does say that innovative materials will be supported, they must complement what already exists. So I think, regrettably, because I support sustainable development as much as anybody, I think I'm in agreement with Councillor Mason and Councillor Brown.
Going to go to Councillor Tyson.
Thank you. I can't really say anything more in addition to what Councillor Mason so eloquently said just earlier, and but I quite agree with what he said there. I think there's for all the valuable reasons that have been presented to us about the sustainability effects of this particular design, I think that it's quite clear in my mind that this is an attempt, a misguided attempt to impose one design idiom onto another, and the two are just incompatible to my mind, and I wish they weren't, but I can't accept the idea of proving this, and I think that I agree with pretty much everything that was in the case officer's report on that.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Muir.
Oh, thank you. I think that what the applicant's trying to do is to have the most sustainable house in Chiltern Road. Someone's got to be first to develop their house to be sustainable as he's going to do. So, and if you look up that road, every house has virtually had porches or extensions at the front and at the back. And I think this is a retrograde step if we refuse this. So I will be voting for it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mantle.
Thank you. I think we're really risk of confusing two separate things. As far as I'm concerned, most of the sustainability improvements lie in other parts of the application other than the view along the street scene. And it's only the view along the street scene which, to my mind, ought to be contentious. I cannot see, although I'm in the back of the building, it looked a complete mess anyway, but that's a matter of judgment. But it's the back of the building, not the public view. And I personally think if we only had that part of the application, we wouldn't be here discussing it. The issue is the view at the front of the building and how this particular design that is proposed is incompatible with the general amenity of the visual amenity of the street. And to my mind, that is the case. If I were being presented with this application at the back of the property, where the bulk of the sustainable improvements are taking place, I would have no problem. But it's the front view and the public view which is the concern.
Right. Thank you very much. No, I absolutely agree. And I think the place that we're at is ultimately where the dispute lies on this application is a porch that is 13 centimetres too large to be run through under permitted development rights. The rest of the application appears to me to be entirely acceptable to officers. Now, clearly this isn't material, but I've got sat at the back of the room somebody who is quite clearly an expert in respect of sustainability, who has considered things carefully and presented a design, which is, don't pull faces at me, please, when I'm speaking. It's really distracting, colleagues. So I have clearly got somebody who's put together the best and most sustainable design that they can possibly submit. But I've also got officers that have said, we think that the same levels of sustainability could be achieved using traditional methods and a traditional design and a look and a feel. I wish that there was something that had been presented by officers that clearly demonstrated that actually this was going to be achievable, because I do have a particular concern, given we know that applications may be appealed, that if we based our decision on that rationale, it would be very, very easy to challenge it, and we could fall down. So I want us to be absolutely clear, whichever way this committee votes, of our reasons for those decisions. My personal view, as I've said, is that where we are is balancing that street scene argument and the question of, does the harm, in inverted commas, of this particular design outweigh the positive benefits that this application presents? I think Councillor Muir is absolutely right. When it comes down to climate change and sustainability, somebody has to go first. Somebody has to move first. There has to be that pioneer. But we are also bound by policies and regulations. We have the NPPF. We know that it's changing and it's in flux. We can't consider what's likely to come out of the government consultation that's just closed. We have a draft sustainability SPD. It's a draft, which isn't relevant and really isn't going to. It's not. It has been passed. We have an adopted sustainability SPD that we need to consider as well, which does provide us with some assistance on this. And I personally really, really do struggle with the concept of a light grey timber-clad porch, which is flat roof, when you've got flat roof porches in render that was white and is now an ugly off-white and is more difficult to maintain on an ongoing basis for residents. I'm not entirely persuaded that the harm to the street scene that the officers are arguing is sufficient to outweigh the positive benefits that this application will provide. And it does seem quite sad to me that an otherwise excellent and thoroughly acceptable application, it could potentially be rejected on the basis of one very, very, very minor element. I am allowed to make a speech in the debate as well as other members, but I will hear your point of order, Councillor Bryant.
It does sound rather one-sided. And I'm just at this point, you've been talking for 3 minutes and maybe we need to get to the vote.
Thank you very much. I think under the Constitution, all members are allowed to make speeches of up to 5 minutes in debates. But since I have respectfully been told to shut up by a member of the committee and move us to the vote, I will do so. And I will ask that colleagues conduct themselves with respect to all members of the committee and in a professional manner at all times. Councillor McDonnell.
Yes, so I agree with what everybody has said regarding sustainability, etc. Obviously, that's really important. But I also want to just touch on the design, because if this was the first extension on the street, would we have granted permission to have wood finish? Because it's a modern design, it's new, it's innovative. It could be what everybody else on the street who hasn't extended decides to do, because actually it looks really good. I just feel quite sad that we're not modernizing these buildings when we're still keeping some of that character, but actually just making them look quite pretty. You've got the woods right behind you. It just seems a shame.
Thank you very much. Right. Do any other colleagues wish to speak during the debate? No, I'm seeing nobody else indicate, in which case I shall comply with Councillor Bryant's wish and move us promptly to the vote. Sorry, Councillor Mason. Sorry, apologies. Oh, sorry.
It is quite complicated.
Right. All right. I will clarify. So long as nobody else raises a point of order or objects to me clarifying, I will make the point prior to clarifying that I am not speaking or debating on the motion at this point. I'm performing my function as chair in providing clarification and direction to the committee on what the committee is being asked to vote on. Are we satisfied with that? Good. Thank you very much. We've had a proposal that the application be accepted. That proposal has been seconded. Therefore, the committee is voting on whether to accept this application. Clearly, we're only going to be having one debate, because if the motion to accept isn't accepted, the application would be rejected. In the event that the committee rejects the application, the applicant does have a right of appeal as well. So may we please move to the vote on accepting? Oh, hang on. I need to set, right. Okay. Now I need to set out the reasons for this. Clearly, as I was speaking in the debate, and I'm in favour of approving this and to risk being told off, I will ask the officers to summarise what they've heard from the arguments to approve this application for me.
Chair, the recommendation the recommendation of Councillor Muir is that planning permission be granted, and it appears that the reason that has been expressed by members is that on that basis they consider that the benefits of the proposal in terms of the sustainability credentials of the scheme would outweigh any impacts that the development may have on the character and appearance of the street scene. That's my understanding with regards to the views expressed, and the reason would be the reason for granting planning permission, that the benefits of the proposal outweigh any harm.
Yes,
conditions which would be imposed if planning permission is granted?
Yes, I think that would be beneficial.
I would suggest two conditions, and they're standard conditions that we normally apply on every application. The first is that the development be commenced within 3 years of granting planning permission, and the second that the scheme would be implemented in accordance with the submitted drawings. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So that summarises things. Could we move to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion is lost.
All right. So as that motion has been lost, that means that the committee has rejected the application. It says if first motion lost, then ask for a further proposal and second. I don't think that we need to go through that part of the procedure, do we? We don't need to. Do I actually have to now have the alternate? Okay. Okay. So now apparently I do need to go to the next motion, and we need a motion to refuse the application and a summary of the reasons for that. Councillor Brown, can you combine everything in one go for me?
Yes. So I'm happy to propose that we refuse for the reasons stated in the report by the officer, that the environmental benefits do not outweigh the harm to the street scene.
And Councillor Mason?
Second, for the same reasons.
Okay, I think that the majority of this has previously debated. Unless anybody has anything further that they wish to add to the committee's reasons for this proposal. No. All right, so I've had a motion proposed and seconded that the committee reject in line with the recommendation in the officer's report for the same reasons set out therein. Could we have a vote on that, please? Oh, you are voting yes if you want to reject and no if you don't want to reject.
Chair, that motion is carried.
All right. And that concludes that item. Colleagues, I'm mindful it's 12 minutes past 9. Does anybody want a comfort break? Yes, please. We will take a 5 to 10 minute comfort break. It depends how long everybody needs. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Balance wasn't like that.
different area committees.
Yeah.
So
And
All right, colleagues, I would like everyone to take their seats, please, because we've had quite a lengthy break. So I think we will restart. Can we get the live stream? Is the live stream back up? Are we there? Okay, lovely, great. So thank you very much, everyone. We'll resume this evening's business with item number 6, which is application 24/00756/FP, Coach House Cloisters, Hitchin Street, Baldock, Hertfordshire, SG7 6AE. And I have Melissa Tyler to present the report on both this and also the linked application, which is 24/00757 LBC, which we will be considering as at the next agenda item as well. So Melissa, do you want to do your combined report for us, please?
Thank you, Chair. Everyone hear me? So if we can go, I've no updates since the report has been published. So if we can go to the slides.
Are we having some difficulty pulling up the slides? Have we got a low-tech fallback just in case we can't get the slides up? No. No, because we're all reliant on computers now, aren't we? Oh. Okay, we're trying to load them up from the room. We may be able to get that going. Bear with us, colleagues. Okay. All right. There we go. Hopefully, yeah, that looks like it should work now. Okay, over to you, Melissa.
Okay. So the property is located on the north side of Hitchin Street, Baldock. It's Grade 2 listed and within the Baldock Conservation Area. The site is within the designated town centre area within North Herts local plan, but it's not within the primary or secondary retail frontage policy. The application site is part of a larger original site containing the listed building at the front of the site and later additions running northwards into the site. Next slide, please. So this photo just shows the frontage along Hitchin Street. This section of the building is to remain as offices. The gates shown here are to be removed and a new gate to be located further back from the frontage to allow for cars to wait to enter and exit to the highway. Next slide, please. So again, this is slightly different angle, just showing the frontage. And next slide, please. So this is looking in the site along the extended bit to the back of the site, which is where the residential properties will be located. This is the access way, which will take up 3 car parking spaces and access to the rear where the office car parking is, and 2 spaces for the residential. So next slide, please. So this is looking back towards the front of the site, just where that blue bit is where the access way to the Hitchin Street is. Next slide, please. And then just the frontage of where the residential properties front doors are. And next slide, please. So these are just similar coach style entrances along Hitchin Street. So if you scroll through them, there are quite a few down Hitchin Street of different varieties. If you go to the next picture, again, another coach in. These properties will have different either residential or commercial elements to the rears. And next slide. This is taken from the gate into the site, and you can appreciate the access narrowness of the way there. And next slide. Again, this is another just coach in along Hitchin Street. And next slide, please. And this is just a close-up of the gates that will be removed and pushed back further into the site. And next slide, please. So this is the proposed site plan. This application has been called in because of highway objections. So highways have recommended refusal, which seems to be based on the ingress and egress of the emergency vehicles through the historic coaching in archway, which is as existing, is not adequate for large vehicles. It would seem that highways have not considered the listed nature of the historic frontage and its inherent restrictions on height and width of its existing access. When assessing the scheme as a whole, it was considered that the benefits of bringing this listed building back into use and delivering houses in a sustainable urban location on previously developed land outweighs the objections raised by highway authorities. The applicant has submitted a response to the highway objections, which was an appendix to my report. So this plan also shows there are 9 car parking spaces proposed. 5 for the residential properties and 4 for the office use. The local plan does state that 2 spaces per dwelling are required, with 0.75 space per dwelling for visitors, equaling 4 rounded up, should be provided. I've taken the view that given that the site is located within close proximity to a number of public transport links, including buses and the train station, and other amenities and services within the town centre, that I do not consider it appropriate to object to the proposal on the grounds of lack of parking provision because of its sustainable location. So next slide, please. So this plan just shows you the split of residential units, clearly shown by the different colours. Unit 1 in blue there has a basement and 2 stories above, and the rest are 2-storey properties, which all meet the national space standards. And next slide, please. So this shows the elevations. The proposed development comprises no external changes to the building's principal elevation, with all external works proposed on the elevations facing the internal courtyard to the rear. We consulted the conservation officer, who provided formal comments and simultaneously on the listed building application as well, coming to conclusion that no objections subject to conditions on windows and materials are included. So the proposal would not harm the heritage significance of the hosted listed building or the conservation area. Proposal would not result in any material harm to the reasonable living conditions and amenities of neighbours or the future occupants, and would have an acceptable parking provision given its sustainable location. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do colleagues have any questions for Melissa? Yes, Councillor Mantle.
What is the use of the buildings at the moment? They're actually occupied as offices.
They're empty at the moment.
Yeah, that's what I was
yeah,
getting at.
yeah. So the previous use was offices. They're now vacant at the moment.
No, it's the fact they're vacant. And the other question, what arrangements are made for refuse collection?
So there are bin storages for each property, and they would be brought to the frontage alongside all the other residences down that hip road.
Lovely. Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you. So the Highways Authority have maintained their objection, and in 4.3.29 you say it's therefore down to the council as a decision-making authority to consider the imposition of suitably worded conditions that cover highway safety matters. I couldn't find a condition in this all the listed building. Have we not imposed anything to do with highways?
No.
Why is that? We don't think it's necessary, or
No, I don't. I mean the conditions. There's already an access. We've moved the gate back to allow for vehicles not being in the way on the road. So I didn't feel like it was necessary to impose any conditions on highways grounds.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Tyson.
A similar question, really. I was going to ask about the situation with the fire brigade, because that was raised as well by Highways as a potential issue. And in your report, it says that that fire brigade access or approval would usually be dealt with through the building control process. It says usually. Not quite sure what the import of that might be. And also, does this application presumably, as far as we're concerned, is unobjectionable on the grounds that I mentioned there about the fire tender
Yes,
access.
so Highways objected that the fire engine couldn't get into site. However, the applicant has stated that through the building regs, they'll be installing sprinkler systems and other to mitigate that. I think a lot of the properties have a similar access issue. And it could be said that residential use is less risky than commercial in terms of fire safety.
Well, just hypothetically speaking, this building control process, if that's left to them to deal with this, what if they say that it's unacceptable? Or is that just not going to happen? Sorry.
It is very possible that building regulation, the building control wouldn't give building regulation consent, but that's not a matter for us. We consider whether to grant planning permission. If they don't get building regulations approval, they couldn't implement the planning permission.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Muir.
Thank you, Chair. I know this very well. From those photographs, I can't see anything in the report about the driveway. It's in a very, very bad condition. Are they going to renew that access road? It's all red brick at the moment, which is just crumbling.
Yeah, that they haven't stated that they would replace that.
Oh, fine. Just to say, everybody, although Highways have said no to it because of the access, there must be at least 24 accesses like that in Baldock, which are old coaching entrances to small little hotels and our houses. So I have no problem with this.
That's lovely, and that's very good to know, Michael. I'm sure you'll repeat that when we're in the debate as well, as opposed to in the questions. Amazing, thank you very much. Nigel, sorry, Councillor Mason, even.
Two questions related. The photos we saw of the side the access road, if you like. It seemed terribly narrow. I was trying to work out how wide it was. Am I right in thinking that the parking spaces will be up there as well? So essentially it's going to be halved.
Yeah, so there's three spaces along the frontage of those properties, and then the rest of the parking is to the rear in a little courtyard. And there's it's probably about 2.5 meters wide to the side of the car, to a parked car.
I hope they're going to be terribly good drivers if they're going to get in and out of there and have parallel parked. That seems quite narrow. I think that's possibly not for the first time. Potential developers been very optimistic about parking spaces, which leads on to my other point. I am slightly worried that we have recommendation from Highways about access to emergency services. I know Councillor Muir's point about there are other places that are equally narrow, but that doesn't necessarily reassure me about whether we should grant planning permission for this one. It just, I know in the notice there isn't anything from the emergency service themselves, from the fire service.
No, I did consult them, but had no response.
No, yeah, which is not the first time. I mean, I notice, I think it's probably the applicant's response on this, under 4.3.24, I think. It says a fire tender would not be required to enter the site. Well, if I'm being honest, if the fire brigade told me that, I'd be reassured, but I'm not sure with due respect to anybody else. I guess the question is, I suppose, been answered is, so we haven't had any response from the emergency services, because I have, I'm in some difficulty with this. Somebody tells me that this should be rejected because there's not appropriate access to emergency services. I kind of want the emergency service to be the people telling me, no, that's okay.
I'm going to take that debatey statementy thing that came out of the
think
question, and I'm going to try and turn it into a question to assist. What is the sort of fire services usual approach to properties like this? Are we sort of satisfied that the emergency services will be able to provide the support the property needs?
I think, given that this is not a new build property, this is a conversion of an existing commercial use. If there was a fire there under the commercial, I assume that they would roll out hoses from the front and put out any fires, similar to other properties down Hitchin Road of the similar layout. Obviously, this is going to be converted into residential, which has the opportunity to improve the fire standards and mitigation of sprinkler systems, materials for internal insulation and stuff like that would increase the fire resistance and to contain any fires within, to not spread through different units.
Yeah, and remind me, I think it is set out in the report, but as I said earlier, colleagues, I'm on a screen as opposed to on my folder tonight. Is the premises is it within range of the hose distance that the fire service requires? I think is it usually 45 meters for them to be able to
maximum distance.
Yeah.
Which it is 45 meters into the site.
Oh, is it
more?
Was there also a potential part of the premises that's not quite reachable by the 45?
Let's read it. Yeah, so blocks 4 and 5 would have the sprinkler systems, which would fall outside the 45-meter distance.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councillor Billing.
Some of my questions were already answered there, but I was also going to ask about the other areas that you highlighted that also have like that coach entrance. What, if you are aware, what are the same options? Because I'm assuming highways could actually still have issues with those properties or those entrances. Has there been comment on how they deal with those ones?
So I think in the applicant's response to the highways, they pointed out a number of applications that have been approved within the area where highways had no objection to similar layouts. There was a property opposite that was granted, I think, this year, that has a similar entrance, and no objection was raised by highways.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Councillor Peace.
Yeah, it's just a very quick one. There's a basement in property 1. Is that basement already there?
Yes.
And I assume there's no issue with having a bedroom in a room with no windows, no outside light? No. Okay.
Okay, Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Melissa, about the fact that recently we've had a number of applications that have had highways objections. And we've just been looking at a document from the highways, and it mentions HEC's place and movement planning design guidance adopted March 2024. Do you know anything about that? I'm just remembering that might hold a clue as to why this has changed.
Yep, we are aware of that design guidance. It's a newly produced design guidance. I understand it's about 1,000 pages long. I might be exaggerating, but it's quite long. I have not read it all, but we are aware of that. That's a material planning consideration. It's not part of the development plan, but it is a material planning consideration. In this instance, we have a listed building, and it would be possible to achieve fire tender access, but you'd have to partially demolish the listed building, which we do not wish to see. But that's not a consideration for the Highway Authority. The Highway Authority are responding based upon the normal standards and the design guide, and they're not taking into account that it's not desirable to partly demolish listed building just so that a fire tender can get to the back, when there are alternatives such as the installation of a sprinkler system in the units that can't be accessed by the hose from a fire tender. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. Councillor Mason.
I had a supplementary fire engine question. The distances in terms of whether a hose could reach it or all the rest of it, is that predicated on being able to park out the front of the, because knowing what that road's like, I wouldn't guarantee the fire engine would even be able to park outside. That was a question. Okay. I'm getting there.
I think there's double yellow lines all along Hitchin Street.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Right, I'm not seeing colleagues indicate that there are any further questions. And you will note, obviously, that we do not have highways in the room to speak to their objection. Insert my usual comments, thoughts and feelings about that. Was that a genuine cough or was it? That was a very well timed cough as well. It wasn't a sarcastic cough, but it could have been. Excellent. And I can see that I've got either the applicant or the applicant's representative at the back, but they've not registered to speak, so they will not be speaking. We have no objectors either. So we've gone through Melissa's report and questions. Ordinarily, I'd ask her to sum up. I feel that that seems a little bit ridiculous, but if you really, really want to sum up, you can. No, good, right. In that case, members, I'll move us into the debate. The officer's recommendation is to grant permission. However, I'll take any other motion. Fastest finger first. Good gosh. Councillor Brown got there first.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to propose that we grant permission as per the officer's recommendation.
Okay, and I can see that Councillor Billing came in second. I'm assuming, are you seconding?
To second, yeah.
Lovely, excellent. Moved into the debate on accepting the recommendation. Councillor Muir to speak.
Fine, thank you. I was going to propose it or second it, but I've been beaten to that. I would just like to say I know this entrance and I know the properties down there. They were they're empty now, I believe, and they were all business premises. I have no problem with this application, and I shall support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Muir. Excellent contribution. Right. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating to speak. Any other points in the debate, colleagues? No. In that case, the recommendation is that we accept the officer's recommendation to grant this application. It's been proposed, it's been seconded. Could we move to the vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Excellent. Thank you very much, colleagues. So item number 7 is the linked application for the listed building consent. I think, Melissa, you covered off the report largely in the first one. Was there anything else that you wanted to add on listed building consent?
Conditions on materials for the windows and doors, I think.
Sorry, it was just to be mindful of the conditions in respect of the materials for the windows and doors. That's the only sort of additional point to note for listed buildings. Do you colleagues have any questions for Melissa on this application? No, I'm seeing nobody indicate. So the recommendation is that we grant the linked listed buildings consent. Could I have a proposed Councillor Brown? And may I have a seconder? Councillor Muir. I'm going to be kind to Councillor Muir because I can see that he wishes
Sorry,
to.
I pressed the wrong button.
And it is on your patch as well. So yes, I'll let you second over Councillor Mantle. Sorry. Right. Any points in the debate, colleagues? Right. So it's been proposed and seconded that we accept the officer recommendation to grant the permission. Could we move that to a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much. That brings us on to agenda item number 10, which is at page 65 of the agenda pack this evening. And that is application reference 24/00497/FP, Autogleam Works Road, Letchworth Garden, City, Hertfordshire, SG8 1LU. And Melissa has the report for this one as well.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any updates since the report was published, so if you can go to the slides. Okay, so the application site is located towards the eastern end of Works Road and on the northeastern edge of Letchworth within the employment area as defined by the local plan. The site is covered by buildings and provides the headquarters for Autogleam. A 2-storey office building is located towards the front of the site and behind a landscape strip. And behind this is the existing warehouse used for production purposes. If you go to the next slide, please. So this photo is taken from Works Road with the headquarters to the right and the proposed warehouse to be demolished. You can just see in between the 2 office kind of buildings. Next slide. So this is looking into the existing and going to be retained access into the site. You can see the warehouse towards the back, which is going to be extended. And next slide, please. So this is looking towards the other end. So the building in the middle there, that's to be demolished and extended just towards the back of it. And next slide. So that's the building that's going to be demolished and replaced. And the next slide. So this plan shows in the dark red what the proposed extension and existing warehouse will be, and the hatched area is what will be demolished. Next slide. So the street scene. So the applicant has reduced the proposed height from the original recommendation, which was 16.3 metres, which is to now 14.6 as requested by officers. This is to reduce the impact of the development, which would have appeared overly tall within its context, in my opinion. Next slide. So these are the elevations. Proposed building would be of a size, design, appearance and external materials similar to other industrial units on Works Road. Following the reduced height, it will be the size of a modern contemporary appearance, which is considered appropriate to the development of a wider site for employment industrial purposes and in the context of existing nearby development in the industrial employment area. Next slide. So this just shows the floor plan and the extent of the extension to the warehouse to the back with lorry access to the front elevation there. I think that's the last of the slide. So considering the economic benefits of this proposed development and whilst accepting the proposal would have a visual impact in locality, on balance, I consider that the proposal is acceptable in terms of design and layout and would have an impact within the public realm, but within the context of the industrial area, which has a variety of different buildings and certainly no uniform scale and layout of the buildings. So I recommend approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do colleagues have any questions or points of clarification? Yes, Councillor Mantle.
I was a little confused by one of the early photographs, which looked to be the wrong way round. This is beyond Jubilee Road, isn't it? To the east of Jubilee Road.
So this is right down the bottom of Works Road, where the big pylon is basically opposite there.
Yeah, but it's beyond. Otterglim is opposite the end of Jubilee Road.
Yeah, it's beyond.
And it's to the right of it. And the photo looks as if you're looking the other way. Perhaps we could have it back and just clarify. So I was completely lost with it.
Yeah, can we just bring the photographs back up and then we can scroll through and you can let us know which one it is?
That one.
That one. Yeah, so that's looking towards the town centre with Baldock behind.
Right, so that's nothing to do with.
So the building there is Otterglim. That's the main.
That's the one on the right.
So that yeah, and then the building to be demolished is the little one in the middle. And then the next.
I'm confused because the plan showed it at the other end of the main building of Otterglim.
No, so this is Otterglim here.
Yeah, that's right. That's opposite the end of Jubilee Road.
That way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's. Yeah, I know where it's taken from. But what I'm saying is the plan showed it was the other end of the main Otterglim building. It was being. That was why I was getting confused.
If you go to the first plan. So that's that headquarters building, the office building, and then that's the.
Right.
So for the benefit of the recording, Melissa just stood up and indicated to the relevant points on the plan to assist members.
You
confused. Okay, I'll move on through the questions, and if sort of you need further assistance, Councillor Mantle, we can come back. If we leave those slides up for the time being, that might be beneficial in case colleagues have further questions on them. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. So the first one relates to the biodiversity net gain. It says in 4.3.10 that there's a mandatory requirement to deliver 10%. As such, should the application be approved, a condition wording is advised. Presumably this will be off-site, is that right?
So they've got they've got an area to the south of the site, which is in their ownership. Which we consulted ecology, and she's happy that they can meet the 10%.
So they can meet it on site.
So they've got additional land that they own
behind
opposite,
it, yeah,
which is sufficient to meet
that 10%.
Yeah.
Yes. How is it a net gain if it exists already? They're going to improve it by increasing the biodiversity on it?
What did our ecologists say? Yeah, so she thinks that they can. There was a supplemental document which states their intentions, of improving the existing, I believe, which our ecologist was happy to support.
So is there a condition in the application? Because it says a condition would be advised. Because I think this is important that we include it in the condition.
I think condition 1 has the biodiversity net gain actually, and it says the effect of paragraph 13 of
Oh, yes,
Schedule
it does.
7A.
You're right. Yeah, I have read that. It is there. Okay. So it has to be submitted prior to the. All right. Okay. Okay, that was my first question. Second question, 4.3.12. This is a major development, so it's eligible for Section 106 contributions, but Hertfordshire County Council have said they have not sought anything towards sustainable transport. Seems a bit of a shame to me, bit of a missed opportunity. Could we not have a cycleway or an extra bus or something in this area?
That's a statement dressed up as a
No,
question.
I'm saying
I
why are
can
we
see
not
Melissa's face.
why are we not challenging that? You know, we want to move towards sustainable transport. Why are we not challenging that? There's an opportunity to get a contribution towards a cycleway or an extra bus service, or a bus lane or something in the area. Why are we not challenging that? I don't think that's acceptable personally.
Do you want to come back on that, Melissa, or Sean? Do you want to take that, Sean?
Thank you. This is obviously an existing established business, and the proposal is to demolish part of it and extend it with another. Obviously, there would be additional employees involved in the process, but based upon it being an established business in an established industrial area, the Highway Authority felt that requiring a sustainable highways contribution would not necessarily meet the tests relating to planning obligations, and therefore decided not to request any such contributions.
Okay, thank you. That's disappointing.
Noted. Councillor Mason.
It may seem like an odd question, but stay with me. 4.3.3. I note that you said that the applicant was persuaded to reduce the height from 16.3 meters to 14.6, which from an aesthetic point of view, I can understand. I don't know how much it costs to build a building of this size, but I'm guessing it's quite a lot. I'm also guessing it costs a lot more money to have a building 16.3 meters high than 14.6. So they must have had a fairly pressing reason for wanting it that much taller. So my question is, what was lost by, we haven't lost sort of an insulated roof or anything like that by dropping the height?
No, so the reason why they want to extend this site is they have other sites which they want to now merge into, so this would be the only site where they produce and store their products. So when I asked them to reduce the height, they have increased the floor area slightly to allow the same volume of shelving space.
Okay, so they haven't lost a floor or something?
No, so it was literally just a massive warehouse where they will store their products because they store them somewhere else. So they're merging like 3 separate properties to one. So by reducing the height, they've just increased slightly the floor space.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Councillor Peace.
If this is a tall building with presumably a flat roof, is there no potential to put PV on the roof if that isn't the case?
I think I've conditioned that they have to provide a energy strategy. Let me just find it. Yeah, so condition 12 is for them to submit a strategy for renewable.
So could that include enforcing them to put PV on the roof?
Yes.
Lovely. Thank you. And Councillor Muir.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions. First of all, we see that the county doesn't want any 106 money, but for highways, but of course North Herts can ask for 106 for cycleways or whatever. Why aren't we asking for any 106 money? My second question is, at the back of the premises, there's land. Really, we should ask for a row of trees to be planted there to help with eco things we would like to see. Two questions there.
I think the question is, are we able to do that, or is there anything that will enable that to be done post as part of the conditions?
Landscape.
Do you want to take it, Sean?
With regards to the first matter, we have also considered whether planning obligations should be required on the back of this proposal, which is to expand an existing employment site. And we did feel that such a contribution towards sustainable transport wouldn't meet the test A of planning obligations, which is necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms. We didn't feel that if it was a new development, then we may have taken a different view. But because it's expansion of an existing unit, we felt that it would not be appropriate. So that's the reason why we didn't ourselves ask for sustainable transport contributions, notwithstanding that those are normally requested by the Highway Authority. And they generally do ask for such sustainable transport contributions, so they've thought about that themselves as well. With regards to landscaping, we don't appear to have a landscaping condition on the application, albeit there are limitations to that, but we could, if members would like it, impose a condition requiring details of new soft and hard landscaping that may be required as a result of this development. And that could include some landscaping around the site.
Can I say, I like you to go ahead with that and get the best deal you as planning officers can get.
I think that's possibly something that we might need to cover off during the debate, and as part of that, and for the committee to agree at that stage. If you want to sort of raise it when we get into that part, Michael, that'd be really helpful.
Fine.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Do colleagues have any further questions for Melissa? Nope, I'm seeing nobody indicate. So, excuse me. So similar to the last application, we don't have an applicant, their agent, or any objectors registered to speak. So again, quick question to Melissa. Is there anything that you wanted to come back and just summarize neatly after the round of questioning for members?
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay. Happy with that? Good. Okay. So the proposal, the recommendation from officers is to grant. Can I have a proposal of some sort to move us to debate? Councillor Mantle.
I'm happy to propose that the permission be granted in accordance with the officers' recommendations and report.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Could I have a second? I can see Councillor Muir. Yeah.
I'll be happy to second it.
Happy to second. Lovely. So that moves us neatly into the debate. At the top of this, I will bring Councillor Muir back in because you've got a effectively an amendment or an additional proposal that you would like the committee to agree. So do you want to state that for us, and we'll try and capture a form of words.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to see some landscaping, trees that roots won't spread into the building. So there've got to be trees where roots go down. If that can be another condition, that would be great.
Okay. Sean, do you have appropriate wording for a condition that you think might be acceptable?
We have standard condition requiring a landscaping scheme to be submitted to the council and approved. With regards to tree planting, there may well be limited space in order to do that. There is land to the rear between the existing building and the railway, and there's already trees in that space. Looking at Google Street View, and also planting new trees doesn't go down too well with the rail authority, because trees have leaves on the line. But it looks like that area is already treed to the rear of the existing building anyway. So a landscaping scheme could require some enhancements to the existing landscaping that's on the site, and upgrades to what's there. But looking at what's available, it would be relatively modest and probably in the vicinity of that building that's proposed to be demolished.
So effectively, I think what's being proposed by Councillor Muir is that we introduce a landscaping condition. And I think what Sean's provided is some of the context of what might happen if that condition is on the application and the practicalities of the applicant taking that forward. We've had an amendment effectively proposed, so I think we need to debate, discuss and vote on that first before we then return to the main proposal. So I will take colleagues' thoughts, feelings and views on the proposal that we add a landscaping condition to this application. Councillor Brown.
I'm happy to support that. Always want more green anywhere, don't we? As much green as we can. I accept that it's going to be modest, so it has to be appropriate. But presumably, they'll come back with a landscape plan, and then the planners approve it. Yeah.
I'm assuming as well, because I didn't ask for a seconder. Are you happy to second the proposal from Councillor Muir? Yeah. Okay. Any other colleagues wish to comment on the proposed amendment? No. Okay, so could we please move to a vote that we introduce a condition in respect of a landscape conditioning?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much, colleagues. Okay, so I'll bring us back to the substantive motion, which is that we grant this application as amended now. So colleagues, over to you for debate and points on that main motion. No? Okay. Anything? No? No? Okay, right. In that case, can we have a vote, please?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Right, so that was our final application to consider this evening. However, colleagues, don't get too excited, because at page 81, we have the final item, which is agenda item 11, the planning appeals. This is just a brief update from Sean. You'll be able to see the appeals tracker in the table there. So Sean, do you want to take us through headlines, highlights, thoughts and feelings, etc.?
Yes, I'll try to be reasonably brief. 8 appeals have been lodged since the last appeals report, and 2 are householder, 5 would be through the written procedure, and 1 is through the hearing procedure. With regards to the case that's going to be through the hearing procedure, that's for 6 dwellings east of Ashmill Poultry Farm at Barcrow, where we refused planning permission. It was reported to Planning Control Committee back in March, and Officer recommendation was accepted to refuse planning permission for 3 reasons. It's anticipated that it now confirmed that the hearing will take place on the 21st of January 2025, statements are required before the 22nd of October. That's this month. There is another hearing that I would like to report to members. You may recall, or some of you were on the planning committee previously, that the committee refused planning permission for 42 dwellings on land east of Ree Spring in Baldock. on site BA4, which was reported actually on the 21st of March this year, and members resolved to refuse planning permission contrary to officer recommendation for reasons with regards to affordable housing and the limited provision that was offered, which was significantly short of the normal required standard. The hearing will open on Thursday, the 21st of November, and it'll be held at these offices. So if any members would like to attend that hearing, which starts at 9:30, they can do so. It is a public hearing that anyone can attend. Deadlines for our statements is 30th of October. Consultants have been appointed to defend the council's decision because it was contrary to officer recommendation. Officers can't do that because that would conflict with our code of conduct for the RTPI. So that's, I thought I'd report that hearing date to you. So let's move on now to the appeal decisions. So since April, 9 appeals have been dismissed and 2 allowed. And you can see from the table that the 2 that have been allowed are actually relatively recent, and they relate to well, there's one part allowed which relates to us having removed permitted development rights for a property, and they sought to gain all their permitted development rights, and the inspector only gave them permitted development rights under Class C, which is actually alterations to a roof that doesn't involve enlargement. In other words, things like roof lights, they're allowed to insert roof lights. So most of the grounds of the appeal, they were not successful on. That's the part allowed. With regards to the other matters, if members have any questions with regards to those allowed decisions, then I'm happy to take any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you colleagues have any questions for Sean on the appeals tracking? No, thank you very much. That was a really helpful update, especially on the hearing. I think members will find that useful, and it's worth tracking and watching how that one goes, I think, colleagues. Councillor Tyson.
Sorry, could you just remind us of the date of that hearing?
21st of November.
It starts at 9:30. They normally start at 10 actually, so it's a bit early. So perhaps the inspector thinks that it will take the whole day. They do adjourn for a site visit towards the end, and I suppose in November it gets dark relatively early, so that's probably why it's a slightly early start. They adjourn usually at the end of the hearing to go on site, which might be in twilight. And as I said, the deadline for our statements is the 30th of October, and we've appointed consultants to do that for us. The consultants are viability experts, so they will be challenging the viability submissions that were submitted in support of the application, which is County Council owned land, and the appellant is Chalkdean Developments LLP, which I believe is wholly owned by the County Council.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And I will echo again, I hope that colleagues found that very useful. And if you are interested in following the hearing, I strongly recommend you attend if you're able to. Right, if there's no further questions or comments, then that was the final item on this evening's agenda. So I'll bring the meeting to a close, and our next planning committee meeting is on the 24th of October. Thank you very much, colleagues.